In this video, we are going to learn how to make this outdoor hammock perfect for lounging. It's lightweight, it's portable, and it's an awesome beginner-friendly sewing project because it's nothing but straight line stitches. We're adding gear loops in our hammock so that we can clip things onto them if we want to, or below the hammock like an underquilt. And then we have a stuff sack that's going to be a separate video. If it's not linked here right now, then it will be coming soon. Let's get started. We're going to need some fabric. My fabric is Mountain XL by Ripstop by the Roll. I've got a link below where you can get your own. This is cut to 10 feet 6 inches, and there's a blueprint also linked that you can see all the dimensions of all of these things. Here we have the grosgrain ribbon. The grosgrain is 30 inches long and it's 1/2 inch width. And then we have AmSteel, which is 7/64 inch width and cut to 56 inches long. Then we'll need our carabiners. And all of these things are going to be making the body of our hammock. Okay, next we're going to gather up our tools. Besides a sewing machine and thread and clips or pins, you'll need fabric scissors, a lighter, and some sort of marking thing like chalk. I like chalk because it rubs off. And then we'll need 18 gauge wire, or 16 to 20 really will work fine. This is going to be to help us pull our suspension through our channels. You can get this like in the hardware store or in the floral section of a craft store. Let's prepare. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to prepare our grosgrain ribbon to become our gear loops. So we have 30 inches long continuously, and we want to cut this into 6 different 5-inch sections. So to do that, we have folded it in half, and we're going to mark 5 inches from one end and 5 inches from another end. You can mark and measure and cut whatever way you want. This way, I just find saves some cuts just by folding it in half, saves some time. So I'm just chopping it right here. Now I have edges that are frayed. Maybe you can see that, maybe you can't, but we want to heat seal them so they don't come undone once they become part of our hammock. So that's what our lighter is for. So we'll take our lighter and we're just going to bring our flame near the edges. It doesn't have to touch, but it'll just melt them really nicely. And do this in a ventilated area. It smells bad. I'm not sure what fumes it produces, but it's just a good idea to do it outside or somewhere like next to a big open window. Okay, next we're going to mark our fabric. So we're going to take our big piece of fabric and we're going to find the very middle of the long edge. So if you're working with the blueprint, we're looking for point M on our blueprint, which is the middle of our long edge, and we find that by holding point A and point B together, holding them and then just pulling the fabric all the way across so that we can find the midpoint with it folded. And we'll take our chalk and put that M point right there. And point M is going to be where we are putting one of our gear loops. It's going to be in the very middle. So I'm marking it right now with my chalk, and then I'm going to open back up the fabric to see my marking. And then I want to make a mark on 2 feet on either side of that for points L and for point N. So I'm just counting 12 inches and then adding another 12 inches once I have that, so that I have a total of 24 inches, which equals 2 feet. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side of the marking. And once you have all 3 markings, then you can do the exact same thing on the other side of the fabric. So there's point L, and there's back to point M, and then we're counting another 24 inches there, and then there's point N. Now let's get our fabric ready. We're going to show you on the table how we're going to do this, but we're just doing a double fold hem on the edges. We're just going to hide these raw edges. So I'm folding it about 1/2 inch, and then I'm folding it over another 1/2 inch. See the raw edges there that we're just covering? So when we take it to the machine, we'll be stitching on top of that, and that's going to leave this nice and hemmed for us. It'll have a very nice finish, no raw edges exposed, and we're just going to be doing that all the way down the machine. But once we get to our first gear loop point, point L, then we're going to take our grosgrain ribbon and we are going to put it on either side of our marking. We'll want it to be locked in the hem. And so the way we'll do that is we'll put the edges of the grosgrain inside one of the folds and then we'll fold it over. You can either do it once or do it twice. I find I'm showing you it folded here twice. It's a little bit too thick to sew and it's a little bit too short. So I find it actually a lot easier if you take your grosgrain and you fold over the fabric once, stick your grosgrain in, and then fold it over again. That way your grosgrain is still locked up in your hem, providing a little bit of weight bearing and extra security for your loop. But then it's also not so thick that it's difficult to stitch. But yeah, so you'll just be doing that between the hems, and it's still like the same hem while you have your grosgrain there. So now that we have it over the machine, we're going to do that fold like we did at the table, half inch over, hide that raw edge, and get it into the sewing machine. So I'm stitching pretty close to the edge of the fold, probably like an 1/8 or a 1/16 inch. I'm going to start with a back stitch. And like I said before, all we're doing is a straight stitch here. So I have my needle in my down position, and then I folded my hem over, got it positioned, and now I'm just going to run it through the machine. And it's a little bit tempting at this point to kind of like pull, and it might look like I'm pulling the fabric, but I'm really just guiding it to have it in a straight line. I think the hardest thing about making a hammock is how big the fabric is and just kind of working with it in your workspace to still be able to get a good straight stitch. Like you might be tempted to like pull it. You want your machine to be doing the pulling, you're just guiding it into position. So we're just doing this nice big long straight stitch all the way down, adjusting our fabric as we need, folding our hem so that it's nice and lined up. And usually one thing I want to note is when you pause, you want to pause when your needle is in your down position. That way when you fold your fabric or manipulate it, you're not going to be pulling it out of your sewing machine, and that way you're not going to be pulling your stitches up or giving big gaps or loops between your stitches. Okay, so now I'm at the point where we're going to put our first gear loop on. So I have my marking. So I stopped a few inches before to give me some working space. I folded my hem, I put my gear loop in, and then I'm folding it over again. I'm clipping it here in place. This is just because I think it's easier once it's a little clipped to sew over. You can also pin it if you want. You don't have to do either of those things. Whatever works, you'll just kind of figure it out. But yeah. And then I'm sewing over, continuing that hem. It's continuous. It's exactly the same except for the fact that there's a gear loop inside of the hem. So once I get close to it, I'm going to undo my clips. I'm going to sew over it, and I'm going to go back and forth a couple of times. I just want to reinforce this just because this potentially is holding a little bit of weight, and I don't want it to easily pull out my hem or pull out my gear loop. I want it to be secure and trustable when I clip something onto it. So go back and forth a couple of times. Then we just do the same thing that we've been doing where we keep folding our double hem. And then we just keep going all the way down and keep guiding our fabric. And then the same thing when we get to the next spot, attach our grosgrain, our gear loop, fold it over, clip it, sew it some more. And then doing that all the way down until we hit the very end with all 3 gear loops. And you're going to do this exact same thing on both sides. And after that, there's just the channels to do. Then the thing we're going to do is sew the suspension channels. So once you have both sides sewn with your gear loops, we're basically doing a very similar thing with our double fold hem. We're not putting gear loops in it this time, but at first here we're doing only a 1/4 inch hem. This is to just hide the raw edges. So like we did before, we're just folding it over and then folding it over again. And we're going to just do the same thing, straight stitch all the way across. 1/4 inch double fold hem all the way across the top. Okay, now you have sealed your raw edges. Great. We're going to fold it over one more time so that we have our channel that we can pull our loop through. So I'm folding it about an inch over. And I'm going to do a stitch very close to the stitch that I just did all the way across. And this is going to close off our channel. And doing a stitch, go in a back stitch to lock my stitch, and then going all the way across near the edge of our 1 inch wide suspension channel. So yeah, you get the idea. Like all the other parts of the hammock, it's just a big long straight stitch all the way to the very end. And since we're going to be bearing some weight on this suspension channel, we want to make sure that it's extra strong. So once we get to the end of this, we're going to be doing another stitch near it, about a 1/16 or an 1/8 inch away. And now I'm doing another one, a 1/16 or an 1/8 inch away from the previous one, still trying to give my channel enough room to fit something through, but make my stitch close enough to the other stitch so it's nice and strong. And I'm going all the way to the end. Now it's nice and reinforced. And you'll do the same thing on the other end of fabric to make 2 channels for each end. All right, now it's time for assembly. If you have your your continuous loops from the other video, now we're going to take our wire and we're going to push it through. The folded end is going to go through. We're just going to put our channel all the way across. And then once we have it open, we're going to take our loops and we're going to get them nice and secure in the wire so that we can pull it through without them falling out. So I just put this at the very end and kind of clamp down the wire and pull it through, pull it through. Got the big bump of 2 or 4 sections to pull over at first. And then this loop, I'm going to clip a carabiner on to the end so that I don't lose that end by pulling it through. And then I'm just going to pull my fabric back over the wire and over the loop until we get it out the other side. Yeah, this part takes a little bit of time, but maybe it won't for you. Maybe it'll be very quick. But you just want to make sure you keep your continuous loops in there. So now I have my loop and I'm going to pull it over the carabiner and really just push all the fabric together. Well, take off the carabiner to give yourself a little more room if you need to, and pull it through nice and tight, gathering the fabric really, really well. And then I can put my carabiner back on. Do the same thing on the other side, and the body of your hammock is complete. Here's our hammock ends, nicely gathered. Do the same thing and you can assemble it. Make sure if you want to do the stuff stack, you check out the other video where we talk about that. That's linked here. And to put your hammock up, you'll just need some straps, some tree straps. Maybe in the future we'll do some suspension videos where you can make your own. But I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please let me know if you have any questions or feedback or anything. I'm happy to hear from you. Thank you.